Friends, welcome to Midlife. Today we will be studying about the anastomosis around the scapula. So this one is the dorsal aspect. First we will see the anastomosis around the body of the scapula and then anastomosis over the acromion process. So the anastomosis around the body of the scapula is formed by suprascapular artery, deep branch of transverse cervical artery, which are the branch from thyrocervical trunk of first part of subclavian artery, and from the circumflex scapular artery, which is the branch of subscapular artery arising from third part of axillary artery. We must remember that the anastomosis around the body of the scapula is formed by first part of subclavian artery and from the third part of axillary artery. This one is important. And now let's see the anastomosis over the acromion process. It is formed by the acromial branch of thyroacromial artery, which is from the second part of axillary artery, and suprascapular artery here, and which is the first part of subclavian artery, and from the posterior circumflex humeral artery, which is also from the third part of axillary artery. So here we must remember that the anastomosis over the acromion process arises from first part of subclavian artery and second and third part of axillary artery. Now let's talk about its clinical aspect. The arterial anastomosis provide the collateral circulation through which blood can flow to the limb when the distal part of the subclavian artery or proximal part of the axillary artery is blocked. Now let's see its notes. Anastomosis around scapula. First let's see the anastomosis around the body of scapula. It is formed by suprascapular artery and deep branch of transverse cervical artery, which is a branch of thyrocervical trunk from first part of subclavian artery, and from the circumflex scapular artery, which is a branch of subscapular artery arising from third part of axillary artery. So the thing that we must remember is that the first part of subclavian artery and third part of axillary artery forms anastomosis around body of scapula. Next, anastomosis over acromion process. It is formed by the acromial branch of thoracoacromial artery, suprascapular artery and posterior circumflex humeral artery. The thoracoacromial artery is a branch of second part of axillary artery. Suprascapular artery is the branch from first part of subclavian artery, and the posterior circumflex humeral artery is a branch from third part of axillary artery. So here the thing that we must remember is that the anastomosis is formed by the first part of subclavian artery and second and third part of axillary artery. Now let's see some clinical aspects. So the arterial anastomosis provide a collateral circulation through which blood can flow to the limb when the distal part of the subclavian or proximal part of axillary artery is blocked. Now let us study about the muscles of scapular region. As we have already discussed the muscles of scapular region and its nerve supply in another video, and also the deltoid muscle. So we will only see these 5 muscles: origin, insertion and actions in this video. So first one is supraspinatus muscle. It originates from the supraspinous fossa from its medial to third part, and its insertion is from the upper impression of greater tubercle of the humerus, and the action of supraspinatus is abductor of shoulder joint. Number 2, infraspinatus muscle. It originates from the middle two-thirds of infraspinous fossa, and its insertion is middle impression of the greater tubercle of the humerus, and its action is lateral rotator of the arm. Third, teres minor muscle. It originates from the upper two-thirds of the dorsal lateral border of scapula, and its insertion is lowest impression of greater tubercle of the humerus, and its action is similar as infraspinatus, that is lateral rotator of arm. Fourth, subscapularis. It originates from the medial two-thirds of subscapular fossa, and its insertion is lesser tubercle of the humerus, and its action is middle rotator and abductor of arm. Fifth, teres major. It originates from the dorsal lateral border and inferior angle of scapula from its lower one-third part, and its insertion is medial lip of bicipital group of humerus, and its action is similar to subscapularis, that is middle rotator and abductor of arm. Now let's see some figures. Let's see the figure of origin and insertion of supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and teres major muscle. So first let's see about the supraspinatus muscle. So it originates from the medial two-thirds of supraspinous fossa, and its insertion is upper part of greater tubercle, that is upper insertion of greater tubercle. Now infraspinatus. It originates from the medial two-thirds of infraspinous fossa, and its insertion is medial impression of greater tubercle of the humerus. Now let's see the teres minor muscle. It originates from the dorsal lateral border of the scapula, and its insertion is on the lowest impression of the greater tubercle of the humerus. Now let's see the teres major muscle. It originates from the dorsal lateral border and inferior angle of the scapula from its lower one-third, and its insertion is on the bicipital group of the medial lip of humerus. And let's see its actions. The supraspinatus muscle is responsible for the abduction of the shoulder joint, and the infraspinatus and teres minor muscle is responsible for the lateral rotation of the arm, and the teres major muscle is responsible for the medial rotator and abductor of the arm. Now let's talk about the subscapularis muscle. So it originates from the medial two-thirds of the subscapular fossa of scapula, and its insertion is lesser tubercle of the humerus, and its action is medial rotator of the arm and abductor of arm. So here we finished about the muscles of scapular region. Please like, share and subscribe for more videos. Thank you.